Do you consider PS3 retro? And I had the same discussion with Oscar some time ago, and we made a video about that on our channel. And what exactly is retro nowadays? What's retro? And a lot of people say that the previous generation is already retro. So what is the PS4 retro? And I was like, okay, no, most people can agree PS4 is not retro because they're still releasing games. There's another argument that says, you know, okay, retro is something that a company is not releasing games anymore. So the PS Vita is retro. They're not releasing games for it anymore. 3DS, is that retro? It just doesn't feel like retro, right? Because it was so... I mean, they were still releasing games for the PS Vita and the 3DS 2 years ago. How is that retro, right? So I guess we're all starting to think about the PS3. That's where most people are starting to draw the line. Okay, 3DS, no. PS Vita, no. PS4, no way. But what about PS3 and Xbox 360? Wii, Nintendo DS, PSP. That generation right there. Is that retro? That's another Pandora's box of a topic. You're right. It is, because it is very subjective, you know. For starters, you know, retro doesn't mean what we know, what we think it means. You know, it's something different. But it's such a term that its meaning and definition was changed by popular culture, you know, a long time ago. So we think of the word retro as something from the past, but there's still being released retro games today. Games with retro graphics, with 16-bit or 8-bit graphics. Are those games retro as well? You know, that's the Pandora's box right there that we're opening with this topic. But that's a good question. I'll give you my opinion. I think PS3 and 360 could be considered as retro, but I don't feel they are because the graphics in those consoles still look a little bit modern. PSP and the Nintendo DS are obviously weaker consoles in terms of hardware. And some of the games, a lot of games on the DS and PSP do feel and look a little bit dated, graphically speaking, and in terms of interface, loading times, controls. So, some gameplay mechanics, you know, are kind of dated already in the PSP, but they just don't feel to me like something retro. Now, PS2 is something that I'm starting to feel more like retro. You know, PS2, I think I can say it's retro. You know, it's been over 12 years since the last game, so maybe PS2. PS2, I have no problem. So if I ever do those videos, top 10 best retro this or retro that, I'll probably stick to PlayStation 2 era and below. But PSP, Nintendo DS, consoles that were released on the mid-2000s and onward, man, it's just... they just don't feel that retro to me yet. Maybe in a few years, maybe in 2-3 years, maybe. PS1 is retro, you know. PS1 is definitely retro. Dreamcast, because Dreamcast is the first console where games don't look... where the first console where games look... where the graphics resemble a little bit more modern graphics. I think the Dreamcast was like it laid the basis for modern graphics, and then the PS2 followed, the GameCube, the Xbox, and so on, right? So Dreamcast is another one that I'm kind of like, man, but it is retro. I think Dreamcast is retro, right? No more polygons, no more triangles, no more deformed characters like in the PlayStation 1 days. So yeah, Super Nintendo, Sega Saturn, I think everybody calls them retro nowadays. Everybody. There's no question. PlayStation. But PlayStation 2, I've seen a lot of people calling it retro already. GameCube. The original Xbox, you know. There are kind of more and more people, YouTubers, you know, regular people in forums, gamers worldwide, magazines, you know, they're already starting to consider those consoles as retro. So I think that's where I'm gonna draw my line. That's my answer. So I don't consider the PlayStation 3 retro yet. Because the majority of the gameplay mechanics, the graphics, The controls in those games feel just as good as any game today to me personally. 360 games is the same, you know. They don't feel dated at all. So PS3, no. PS2, yes. A lot of games still feel great to play today. Well, there are a lot of PS2 games or GameCube games where it's like, this feels kind of dated already. Or it's starting to feel dated. Maybe same with the Nintendo DS and PSP, but I just can't bring myself to feel or to think of them as retro consoles, you know. Let's just stick with PS2 and that's it. GameCube, Xbox and below. That's it.